She seduced men with a glance, vanished from surveillance, like smoke, and carried secrets that could fracture empires. You've never heard of Vera von Falkenhorst, but that's exactly how she wanted it. Her first confirmed appearance was in 1937 Prague, attending a masquerade ball alongside a Czech. Industrialists later found dead with a cyanide tooth, one that had never belonged to him. She vanished before the body was cold. 2 years later, a letter surfaced in Poland, addressed to a French colonel, containing detailed notes on German railway deployments, notes that matched actual classified movement schedules. The handwriting matched that of a vanished Austrian countess presumed dead in 1934. The Countess, Vera's first, alias, born in Vienna, under a false name, trained by 3 different governments, and burned by all of them. She became a phantom during the Second World War. Not just a spy, but a myth. And yet she was very real. You're looking at the woman who infiltrated Nazi high command, seduced a British diplomat into leaking Churchill's troop movement plans, and then disappeared into the ruins of Berlin without leaving a corpse. No grave, no trial, no confession, only fragments scattered like ash in intelligence archives from Berlin, London, Moscow, and Buenos Aires. She didn't serve a country, she served only the game, and the game was survival. MI6 codenamed her Glass Widow, while the Gestapo referred to her as Der Schatzengel, the Chateau Angel, a name whispered in dread even by hardened officers. Her first confirmed appearance was in 1937 Prague, attending a masquerade ball alongside a Czech industrialist later found dead with a cyanide tooth, one that had never belonged to him. She vanished before the body was cold. 2 years later, a letter surfaced in Poland, addressed to a French colonel, containing detailed notes on German railway deployments, notes that matched actual classified movement schedules. The handwriting matched that of a vanished Austrian countess, presumed dead in 1934, the Countess, Vera's first, alias. Here's what you need to understand. Vera wasn't just a spy, she was a weapon engineered through charm, performance, and ruthless precision. She'd never touched a gun, but men died for her, betrayed countries for her, and went mad trying to find her. She could become anyone. A nurse on the Western Front, a secretary in the Reichstag, a nightclub singer in Istanbul. The only consistent thing was her perfume, jasmine and iron. Survivors would recall the scent, long after forgetting her face. One MI6 field officer who crossed her path later developed a he could no longer remember women's names, not even his own wife's. But why did both Hitler and the Allies fear her? Because unlike other agents, she didn't feed information, she shaped it. Vera planted false orders that redirected entire battalions. She forged signatures so perfectly that a Soviet general once personally thanked a German commander for a ceasefire that never existed. Entire battlefronts tilted from her In 1943, the infamous Cairo disinformation spiral caused a British naval convoy to reroute straight into U-boat ambushes. Classified records now suggest it began with a coded love letter left on a diplomat's desk, written in lipstick, sprayed with that same perfume. You might think this is exaggeration, an invention of Cold War fantasy, but dig into the intelligence archives and her name, or rather, her many names, appear over and over, just never consistently. Each file ends in redacted lines. Each agent who claimed to know her was later discredited, disappeared, or quietly transferred to psychiatric care. One even gouged his own eyes, claiming she kept changing face mid-sentence. And that's where the myth deepens. Was Vera one woman, or a constructed identity passed between operatives, or something darker? A mask built by war itself, worn by those willing to become inhuman to survive. Because war doesn't just kill bodies, it erases them. And Vera understood that better than anyone. Her final confirmed act came in March 1945, when she reportedly delivered forged surrender orders to a Nazi stronghold near Dresden, causing a unit to stand down moments before Allied shelling began. No one ever proved it was her. Only a single rose, burned at the edges, was found, pinned to a desk inside the command tent. The scent lingered. And then silence. But records tell another story. One of encoded telegrams from South America in 1948, signed VF, containing accurate details about nuclear tests in the Pacific. Or an Interpol photograph from 1961. A woman in a black veil, boarding a flight to Lisbon with no passport, no luggage, and a smile that made the customs officer forget to ask a single question. And now you know. She existed, She changed the course of war with no bullets, no bombs. Only with her presence. You may never see her face, but if you do, ask yourself what secrets you've already told her. Because if Vera von Falkenhorst was real, and the files say she was, then your idea of history is already a lie. You can't outrun a ghost, especially when that ghost rewrote the war in real time. After her final appearance in Dresden, Vera von Falkenhorst didn't vanish. She fractured, not just from the documents, but from history itself. And what emerged in the following years was more disturbing than any photograph or file. Testimony, unofficial, whispered, shaky voices in cold-lit rooms, trying to explain things no logic could hold. A retired Opfer officer, speaking under a pseudonym in Argentina, described her as the collapse of identity made flesh. He claimed she knew the inner thoughts of generals before they spoke, that she anticipated orders before they were given, that she would vanish from rooms without using a door. And yet, he said this calmly, not as hallucination, but as fact. She didn't lie, he said. She simply told you a different version of truth. And you believed it, because she looked at you as if you already had. By 1946, both MI6 and the KGB had standing orders to execute her on sight. Not to interrogate, not to capture, kill. The implication was clear. Vera didn't just threaten intelligence structures. She destabilized reality. Think about that. In a war where propaganda, deception, and illusion ruled more than bullets ever could, she weaponized belief. Her greatest strength wasn't charm, it was doubt. You could never be sure she was real, and that meant you were never sure anything was. A declassified 1952 CIA report, buried under layers of false projects, contains a strange appendix. A profile of Agent Yulan. It describes her infiltration into a Soviet party in Budapest, under the identity of a Russian where she recited a poem so eerily prophetic that 3 officers defected within a week. The poem has never been recovered, but a surviving line was scribbled by one of the defectors on the wall, his holding cell before his death. You think the gun protects you? She is the gun. Here's where it turns. Vera's influence didn't fade. It evolved. Throughout the late 40s, female agents across Europe began adopting tactics that mirrored her exact style. Coded perfume trails, misinformation by intimacy, seductive chaos, and yet none could replicate her success. Why? Because it was never just about behavior. It was about something deeper. The surrender of identity. Vera didn't play roles. She became them. No mask, no second layer. She erased herself with every mission, until the original woman, if she ever existed, was gone. A vacuum in the shape of a law. Intelligence analysts called it the Falkenhorst effect, when reality bends around a personality too fluid to be tracked. Some believe she was part of something larger, a shadow program designed not by any single nation, but by the war itself. A theory circulated in 1965 by a rogue Mossad analyst posits that Vera was the product of a secret, psychological experiment involving memory erasure and identity transference. He was found dead in his bathtub, eyes wide, water still warm. No signs of trauma, but on the mirror, drawn in condensation, were the letters, VF, not carved, not traced, drawn from inside. You want to dismiss that? You want this to be myth? But then explain how a woman with no official records, no birth certificate, and a dozen conflicting death reports appears in verified photographs from 3 continents. Over 3 decades. Always near political disruption, always behind someone else's power. 1962, Havana. Standing in the background of a speech by Fidel Castro, wearing gloves despite the heat. 1970, Bonn, a diplomat's funeral, where a single guest signed in with the name Elsa Grimm, recognized by no one, but reported by 4 guards as hypnotically under. And through it all, the same perfume. Jasmine and Ion. This wasn't just this was archetype. The spy as myth, as virus, as echo. She was what war made when it lost all boundaries. A woman who used desire not to control you, but to erase you, to write you into a new story, one where you were already compromised before she even smiled. That's what terrified MI6. That's what made Hitler's inner circles speak of her like a haunting. Because you can counter armies, you can intercept messages, but you can't fight what you're not sure is real. Vera von Falkenhorst was not an agent. She was an event, a rupture, and if you think she died in Berlin, you've already fallen for her last illusion. There are photographs that never should have surfaced. Grainy, misfiled, supposedly destroyed, and yet they reappear, like bruises on the skin of history. One of them, dated 1983, was discovered in a sealed envelope inside an East German police archive. No sender, no stamp, just the words, für das Archiv, Seele. The image shows a woman in a long black coat, stepping off a train platform in Leipzig, face turned from the camera, but unmistakable to anyone who's followed the myth. The posture, the gait, the gloves, and over her shoulder, jasmine pinned to the lapel. The photograph has been digitally analyzed, color-corrected, disputed, dismissed, and still, it met Vera von Falkenhorst, 40 years after her alleged death. No wrinkles, no fatigue, as if she'd never aged a day since Dresden, or more chilling, as if she had never belonged to time at all. And here, S for they Dante print in the archives. A year after that photo, 2 Stasi agents assigned to verify her identity were both declared mentally unfit for duty. One tried to remove his face with a mirror shard, muttering she wore my reflection. The other disappeared during an interrogation, leaving only his shoes and coat. That's not superstition. That's documented. You can read the forms, filed with the mark verblich unbekannt, whereabouts, unknown. Same phrase MI6 used in 1944. Same phrase the Mossad typed in 1969. Wherever Vera went, the files turned to ghosts. But you're still trying to rationalize. You think, maybe she had doubles, maybe she staged her death, maybe she was just that good. But then you look at the patterns. She doesn't just reappear. She returns at points of rupture. Berlin before the wall, Saigon during its fall, Cairo the week of the bread riots, always at the edge of a regime's collapse, one step ahead of the next storm. The KGB had a term for her region tans, rain dance, because her presence meant change was coming, violent and total. And if she wasn't working for one side or the other, then what was she guiding? The closest we've come to understanding her motives comes from a letter, smuggled out of Buenos Aires in 1977, addressed to my only constant. It reads like a love note. Until you realize what Esbjörn described is a nation of silence, a place with no borders, no flags, only agents who've shed their names entirely, like snakes, shedding skin. The author writes, "We don't betray nations, we betray the idea of being owned." The signature is blurred, but under UV light, initials appear faintly VF, and that's when you realize what Vera truly represented. Not ideology, freedom, but not the kind you celebrate, the kind that terrifies governments. The freedom to vanish completely, to rewrite yourself as many times as needed, to be untraceable, unkillable, untouchable. The ultimate spy, because she spied even on the self. The ultimate weapon, because no side could claim her. The ultimate warning, because she proved a single person, properly could dismantle the machinery of war by simply refusing to exist on its terms. You can't file that, you can't shoot that, you can only watch as it walks past you, wearing your memories, whispering what you should have done differently. In 1990, just after the Berlin Wall fell, a West German journalist published an anonymous interview with a woman in black who claimed to have influenced no fewer than 5 failed assassinations. Between 1943 and 1987, the journalist was found dead of a heart attack the night before publishing the follow-up. The file was lost, but his wife swore the last words he said were, "Her eyes don't forget. They remember who you were." So what does that make her now? A legend, a curse, a fragment of the war that refused to die? Or something else entirely? Something that exists only in the blind spots of power, the moments when the camera fails, the records go missing. The general forgets the name of the woman he loved just before he turned on his country. Vera von Falkenhorst wasn't defeated. She was released, and maybe, just maybe, she never stopped moving. You're reading this because you felt it. The pull, the pattern, the scent of something that shouldn't still be alive in the pages of history. But Vera von Falkenhorst is not history. She is aftermath. She is the echo left in rooms where secrets were told and never written down. And by now, you've realized something else, haven't you? This story was never just about her. It was about what she revealed. A deeper war, hidden beneath flags and orders, fought not with guns, but with memory and erasure. In 2004, a small cache of film reels surfaced in an abandoned storage facility outside Zurich. Just 16mm footage of a woman walking through various cities. Cairo, Prague, Lisbon, Buenos Aires, always dressed in black, always alone. Always glancing directly at the camera. Some frames freeze for no reason, others blur at the edges, as if the film itself is resisting clarity. Experts authenticated the stock, but not the woman. Facial analysis returned dozens of false men. No clear identity, no clear origin. One reel ends with a close-up of her face. Her lips part, but the reel burns to white just before sound begins. And here's where it turns dangerous, because every person who's viewed all 5 reels, archivists, agents, academics, has later reported dreams, not about Vera, about themselves, but different. In the dreams, they're not who they were. They're someone else. Sometimes a nurse in 1940s Berlin, sometimes a trader waiting at a station, sometimes a lover who betrayed her or was betrayed by her. The dreams feel real, and they always end the same way, with her voice whispering a single sentence in a language no one can identify. Linguists have tried. It doesn't match Latin, Greek, German, or anything else, no. But when spoken aloud, the sentence makes dogs whimper, makes birds fall silent. Vera never needed weapons. She was one, and the world understood that too late. You're tempted to see her as a story, an anomaly. But what if she wasn't unique? What if she was a prototype? What if the real project wasn't a single spy, but the creation of narrative agents? People designed not to carry information, but to alter the meaning of information itself. Think about it. The collapse of the Reich, the rise of Cold War paranoia, the proliferation of secret police, double agents, invisible hands pulling entire nations apart. What if that was her legacy? Not her actions, but the atmosphere she left behind. A world where no one can be trusted, where identity is fluid, where truth is just another alias. She was never captured because you can capture someone who has already rewritten themselves in the space between your memories. And now, the final question, the one none of the files, the rumors, or the suicides ever answer. Why did she do it? No ideology, no cause, no master. Why walk into war with nothing but a name you could shed at will? Maybe it was revenge. Maybe it was survival. Maybe it was curiosity. Or maybe, and this is what keeps the survivors up at night, maybe she believed the world itself was false, that governments, lovers, enemies, they were all actors in a stage built on illusion, and that only by stepping outside the play, becoming unreadable, could you ever be free. She once wrote in a stolen margin of a CIA field manual, "You don't escape by running, you escape by becoming the question no one dares to ask." So, ask it now. What if Vera von Falkenhorst never wanted you to find her? What if, by reading these words, by piecing together her scent, her story, her silence, you have already become her next identity? Because someone is always watching, and someone always needs to disappear.